Without any form of text adjustment, our font size is going to be really small when in full screen or really big when in a minimized window, depending on the font size in use. Now, some people may say, just enable best fit, that way the text will adapt to fit its bounds. And, that looks halfway decent right now, but believe me, that's the last thing we want to use, because it's going to be resizing itself based on the length of its string, which will constantly change while it's being generated. So in reality, best fit is only practical when used with text that's either static or set instantly. Anytime other than that, and it just looks poorly executed. Taking a look at this in actual implementation, here you can see the visual detriment of using best fit with auto-generation. So how do we combat that? Simply put, and yes, it's very simple, we need to make our own best fit that instead of looking at the size of the string, we'll look at the size of the display window to better adapt the font size. This is called adaptive text. So let's enter our scripts folder, and this doesn't qualify as a core component, so I'll make another folder called features. And inside I'll make the adaptive text component. Include the UI namespace so we can access our text. Now define the variable for the text component we'll be controlling, as well as a boolean to determine if we continually update to accommodate for changes in window size while the application is running. Then in start, we need to capture the text component attached to this object. And remove update, replacing it with a new function called adjust. Now, if we continually update, then we need to invoke adjust as a repeating method. If not, then we need to adjust once and disable the script. Call adjust, and then disable the class. But if we continually update, then use the invoke repeating method to keep adjust running. Invoke repeating takes the name of the method, so pass in adjust as a string. Set 0 as the initial delay so we start immediately. And just so all of our adaptive text doesn't update at the same time, in case we use a bunch, I'm setting the refresh rate to a random value. Okay, now we need to know the default font size at our default resolution, so make a public integer representing that value. And now we need to know the default screen resolution. This will be different for just about everyone, so I'll show you how to find this number. I'll just leave it as 0 for now. Now, the resolution will be our screen width plus the screen height. And so in Start, print the result of adding those two values together. Then select the speech text in Unity and add the adaptive text component to it. And when the game starts, the number that shows in the console, take that and set it as the default resolution. This way we can scale or shrink the text as a whole depending on any change in window size. Now that we have the two default values, we can come in to adjust and calculate the new target size. But first, invoke repeating doesn't care if the mono behavior or game object is disabled. The method will still run if it's invoked, so let's check and make sure that adjust only occurs when the text is active. Just like that. Okay, now we can get to work. Create a float for the current resolution of the screen at this point in time. Get that just like we got our default resolution, but make it a float because that will help in a later operation. Now find out what % this is of the default resolution. That determines whether to scale or shrink the text. Now calculate the target font size as the default font size multiplied by the current %, and make sure to round it to an integer since that's the value of the font size text will be looking for. The default font size must be cast as a float to properly scale with the %. And now apply the text font size as the newly calculated value. Oh look, it's a flout. Just make sure you correct any typos. Now when we play the game and text starts forming, we can adjust the default font size to see what works best. Make sure continual is turned on for this and just change the integer value until it updates to a size you find best. This is also good for testing the delays in update. Mine is too slow. And while I'm thinking about it, it would be best to adjust immediately and start, and then try to invoke. That way we make sure it's at a good size initially. And now let's change the resolution. Notice how it isn't updating because the script is disabled. So let me come back and re-enable it. And now it should adjust. There we go. Everything is in the same placement as with the smaller window. Notice how that worked. And since it isn't best fit, our text can generate while still maintaining proper size. So with continual turned on, we can shrink again and it'll update once more. And that's frankly way too long of a delay, so consider turning it down really low. And you can always turn these delays into public variables to set different delays for different items, or set them all to be the same. It hardly matters. What does matter is that you find what looks best to you and your audience. Maybe text as important as the dialog box should be checked every frame, while more minor fields can be delayed. Now, the reason we aren't using best fit is because the text is generated and constantly changed. But for something like the speaker name, which is assigned immediately, that could be best fit, no problem. Just make sure that the text fits within the confines of its container image. So in the next video, we'll begin adding sprites in text. I will see you guys there.